What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma if you're new here, and I love to talk about all things Peloton, cycling, and fitness. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post every single Sunday. Today I'm going to be talking about heart rate zone training and then also heart rate zones in general, specifically on the Peloton bike, but a lot of this advice could probably be related to pretty much any cardio. So Peloton actually used to offer heart rate zone training classes, and they discontinued them in January of 2020. I think like right at the beginning, they're just like, we're not offering them anymore. I think at the time they're being put on pause, but they just haven't come back. I personally don't think they're going to make a comeback. The only instructor that's left at Peloton that taught them was Christine Duracol, and she was just moved over to power zone training. Honestly, I feel like heart rate zone training and power zone training are kind of similar because there's zones that you want to push to, and then I feel like power zone training does it better and people prefer power zone training before, but that could just be like my opinion, that could be misguided. But basically I don't think that the heart rate zone training was super popular, and that's why they decided to discontinue it. Still, there are on-demand classes that you can go take heart rate zone training, specific classes with Christine, and then you can also always see your heart rate and what zone you're in for every single ride you do if you have a heart rate monitor. So I think that it's important to like know about heart rate zones in general, understand like what your heart rate means, but I don't think that the heart rate zone training is super important, but we will cover everything. So the first thing that you're gonna need if you wanna do heart rate zone training is a heart rate monitor. I use an Apple Watch. It's an expensive heart rate monitor. I don't think it's like the best heart rate monitor. I know there's a lot of different options. You can buy the one directly from Peloton. I've heard kind of mixed reviews on that. And then there's also a bunch on Amazon. I'll try to link them down below. For like relatively cheap, I think like 30 bucks, you can get a heart rate monitor. And honestly, I would suggest it, especially if you just like having additional data. I think that it's super interesting. So once you have that heart rate monitor, you're gonna have to figure out your zones. If you actually have the Peloton bike, the Peloton does it all for you. Once you connect that heart rate monitor, during your ride, it will tell you your heart rate and then it'll tell you what zone you're in. But if you don't have the Peloton, then you're gonna have to figure that out yourself. And that's what I currently do. So the general advice, and this is what Peloton follows too when they calculate it for you, is that your max heart rate is 220 minus your age. So I'm going to just be using my age in this video. I'm 23, so my maximum heart rate is 197. Honestly, I think that's a little bit high. I don't think I've ever gone over like 190 heart rate. And obviously this is not like an exact formula. It's just taking your age. It doesn't take into like fitness or really any other things about your body. So it is like a very kind of rough estimate, but I still think it's like a good estimate. So 197 is my highest. Then Peloton breaks it down into 5 different zones you can be in, and they teach heart rate zone training classes in like all of those different zones, I think, besides warm up. So if you like want to focus on one zone, you can go and look for that class. Zone 1 is the warm up zone. It should be an easy effort, warm up, recovery, cool down, and it is 65% of your maximum heart rate. So for me, that is less than 128 beats per minute. I find that pretty accurate. When I first get on the bike doing the warm up, I'm usually around 100 to 120. And then zone 2 is the endurance zone, which is 65 to 75% of your maximum heart rate. And it should be an average effort, a comfortable, sustainable challenge. I think you're still supposed to be able to hold a conversation during this. And for me, that is 128 to 148 beats per minute. Zone 3 is the power zone. So that is 75 to 85% of maximum heart rate. And it is the above average effort. It feels challenging, heavy breathing. I don't think you're supposed to be able to like hold a conversation. I think you could like kind of gasp one out, but it's pretty strenuous. Like you're getting up there now. And that is 148 to 167. I personally start really feeling it when I hit 160 beats per minute. I can feel that like, oh, I'm really working hard. And then zone 4 is the threshold zone, which is 85 to 95% of the maximum heart rate. It is a hard effort, very challenging multi-minute sprints. I'm not sure if I've ever done multi-minute sprints, but it is 167 to 187 beats per minute for me, and at that point that is really high. Like if I hit 180, I am literally like dying on the bike. It does happen sometimes, but that I think that's actually like my maximum but 180 is very, very hard for me. And then zone 5 is the max capacity, which is 95% or above of your maximum heart rate. And it's as hard as you can go, very short burst to the finish line, and that's 187 beats per minute or higher for me. And yeah, basically I will never get there. And the heart rate zone classes are just titled the zone name, so it's really easy to find. It'll be like heart rate zone training max capacity ride, and that's like the zone 5 ride. So it's very easy to find what you want, which I appreciate. They have endurance, which is zone 2, and the description is maximize your outputs and conserve your energy for a heart healthy dose of endurance. So you're kind of keeping your heart rate low, but you're just cycling that whole time. And then zone 3, the power zone. The description is ride it out in zone 3 to build stamina and focus on staying in control of your heart rate. So again, that's like a little bit higher, but you're still kind of just like on that grind. Then there is the threshold, which is zone 4, and the description is you'll be in zone 4 pushing your trainings to new levels. So for that, I found that you will be in like zone 2, zone 3, like you'll have recovery basically, because you can't only be in zone 4 the whole time. And then same with the max capacity rides, zone 5, and it'll say you'll spend time in the most challenging zone 5, but it's like you'll spend like 30 or 45 seconds out of the entire ride in zone 5, because zone 5 is not sustainable at all. So you kind of build up to that and you're like in the other zones during the class. That was something I was unsure of. Like I knew that it had to be sort of like hit where you'd have recovery, because otherwise it would just be so intense. Although I have taken the max capacity heart rate zone rides and they have been intense in the past. Obviously they're trying to get you to your highest zone. It's a hard ride, but it's kind of enjoyable, I guess, if you like hard rides. Now I'm going to talk about the benefits of heart rate zone training and then also just paying attention to your heart rate during different rides. I definitely don't take a lot of heart rate zone training specific classes just because I personally don't feel like I get a ton out of them, but I do monitor my heart rate during all of my rides. And it's not really something you can change easily. Basically, as you get more fit, your heart should not have to work as hard and your heart rate should be lower. But besides that, I just find it good to kind of understand how hard my body is working. One of the biggest benefits for heart rate monitoring / training is that you can actually recover. This was a huge mistake I made at the beginning of getting into the Peloton, is basically I never wanted to rest. Like when I was on the bike, I just wanted to go hard all the time. So then I just went mediocre the entire time, because without full recovery, it's really hard to do sprints, for example. When I look at my heart rate, when the instructor says recover, I want to make sure that my heart rate is actually getting down to like zone 2, maybe bottom of zone 3, just so my body can actually recover from whatever the like push was before. And I think that's really hard to do when you're not monitoring your heart rate, because it might feel like you're not working as hard as your last sprint, but you're still truly not recovering. And I just feel like if you see that heart rate and you can see it start going down, like you know you're going in the right direction. And then you also know like if you're going too easy, if you drop down to zone 1, you probably need to, you know, pick up the pace a little bit, add some resistance. I think it goes both ways to have a heart rate zone to aim for that really helps your recovery during the ride and after the ride. If I have all the time in the world, I'll do a cool down ride. I really do like the cool down rides, but at the minimum, I have to keep cycling until my heart rate is below 130, because if I get off the bike and my heart rate is above that, I know that I will be like cramped tomorrow, that my muscles will be sore. It's just good to like flush out that heart rate and let it come down while you're still working out and like fleshing out the legs. So I also think that's just a really great perk of monitoring your heart rate. The other good thing about heart rate training and heart rate monitoring is it takes into account of external factors. So if you don't sleep well, if you worked really hard the day before, if you didn't eat breakfast, if you did eat breakfast, if it's the afternoon instead of the morning, all of those things will kind of factor into your heart rate, and it'll either make your body work harder for the same output or less hard for the same output. But basically it's validation that you're not going crazy. So if you do a ride and you get like 150 output, but your PR maybe is like 200, 250, and you're just like, wow, I really felt like I was trying on that ride, but my output is so much lower, like, was I really not trying as hard? And if your heart rate is like super up, then you can kind of tell that something is out of whack, basically, that your body needs something and it's like working harder than it has to get a lesser output. Obviously, it's not like super helpful, and sometimes you already know that. I know a similar workout that I take with or without breakfast my heart rate will be higher when I don't eat breakfast, which makes sense. And it's kind of cool that your heart rate like takes into all of those accounts, and it can reflect something that probably output cadence resistance can't reflect. And then finally, I would say the last cool thing about heart rate training and heart rate monitoring is you can kind of see your fitness improve. I feel like the biggest way that people like look to see if their fitness is improving is by weight. And weight is a pretty bad way to see if you're actually getting more fit, because obviously you're gaining muscle. It also depends what you eat. There's just so many different factors that affect your weight that you might not see the results you want, but you can probably see more direct results in heart rate zones and like your heart rate during a ride. So when I first started riding the Peloton, I was in zone 4 and zone 5 like the majority of the workout, probably like 70%, which I don't even think that was healthy at the time, but it was just because I was out of shape. I had to work really hard to keep up with the instructors, but after riding like 9 months, I can see that I'm way more in shape. My heart rate is way lower. I'm in zones 4 and 5 for maybe like 10 to 20% of the ride, which I think is good. You don't want to be just at the top because it is really strenuous on your body to be in those high zones. Like that's like cool to be able to see that your body is improving even if your weight doesn't reflect it or you don't feel like you're actually getting anything out of the Peloton. Like you definitely are. Heart rate monitoring can help you see that. Overall, I really like heart rate monitoring for my other rides, but I'm not a huge fan of the classes. My biggest thing is I still struggle with getting into the zone that they say. So usually Christine will suggest a resistance and a cadence to go at, and then she's like, and then you should be in zone 2. And even then I'm still not in zone 2, I'm in zone 1 or I'm in zone 3. Like I just feel like it's really locked and specific to be personalized. And I just think that they're moving to power zone because power zone is like better for more personalized workouts. So I probably would not recommend that you take heart rate zone training unless you just kind of want to see what it's all about. And maybe you do like it, it's just not for me, but I highly recommend heart rate zone monitoring. That's it for this video. I hope I answered any questions you have about heart rate zones. I feel like it's not covered very well by Peloton. You're just kind of like, what is this? You can get a heart rate monitor, but you don't really know what it means. If you guys have any other information about heart rate zones, please let me know. I did a lot of research for this actually to try to find like more scientific stuff, and I just really couldn't find a lot. I think that it's because like everybody has different zones, so even Peloton just kind of like made up these zones. There are like other recommended cardio zones, but they're not exactly the same. But I hope you guys are having an awesome week, staying safe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!